Hi everyone, so this is the video to discuss the article, The Science of Influencing People, 6 Ways to Win an Argument. So the article sort of works in a very self-explanatory ways. Ultimately, it's going to offer 6 strategies or concepts to think about to be more effective in arguing with people. It seems so often when people argue, they want to fight, and they want to like increase the volume and make it contentious and attack the other person. And while that might feel somehow satisfying in a visceral way, it's not really the most practical way to try to get your point across to people. Article begins and it talks about this concept in paragraph 3 called the illusion of explanatory depth. And I have a question. What does that mean? So an interesting thing is that it's very much the same thing as something we talked about way back in the beginning of the semester, the Dunning-Kruger effect. This idea that people think that they know much more about something, that they think, yeah, I understand that, but if you probe them a little bit more, they really don't have the depth on a topic of full understanding that they themselves believe. Paragraph 4 talks about another interesting concept that we tend to remember the things that support our beliefs, and we tend to forget the facts that don't hold up our beliefs. And you can always imagine this in a domestic argument where someone's talking about all the things that he or she does in support of the family and is like, you don't do anything and such, but then the other person remembers all the things that he or she does in terms of taking care of the household, and this is where they battle, and probably both of them are right, but we have a tendency to remember the things that support our argument, and so does the other person and such. So that's what that's about for paragraph 4. So the article goes on and basically explains and takes us to, see if I have any other questions to go over. What's the main idea of paragraph 4? So that's what I just was talking about, the idea that we tend to remember the facts that support our own beliefs. So then the article goes on and talks about the 6 things. There's a question like in a single sentence. Can you explain what each of these are? So just to go over some of them, it seems like it's common sense, but it's worth talking about. So it's better to ask how would something work rather than why should it be. That you want to look for the mechanics of an idea rather than the more abstract thing as to why. The next thing is to fill their knowledge gaps with a convincing story. So oftentimes it's effective to take abstract ideas and put them into a very specific narrative of, well, how would this change in policy influence a specific person, a student who lives in such and such part of the city, by being able to create this scholarship, then this person who couldn't do such and such would be able to, go to school and so forth. Of course, the other person could come back with equally convincing stories, but nevertheless, there's a way in which when you get specific and have a constructed narrative, that works to support your argument. So reframing the issue, and another way to talk about reframing the issue, I have a note to myself here, is come at something in a different way. So if it's not working to get someone to see the perspective through how you're doing it, you try to come at them with a different way of seeing the thing. The fourth one is to appeal to an alternative identity. So when someone's, very much so in their conservative mind frame or their liberal mind frame, or you're thinking like I'm thinking, this is how it must be for the faculty, and such, then it would be helpful making your case. Well, how is this for the student? I come at this perspective of expecting students to be responsible for their work and getting things done, and I probably have a tendency of thinking that people, when they're not responsible, when they're not doing things they should for school, that it might be because of a laziness or a disregard, without me realizing necessarily the other responsibilities that a student has and such. So to remind me that I'm a father as well. So if a parent as well, if you're a parent or something making the case, then that is appealing to a different identity, which helps me to gain, to see your perspective possibly in that situation. Okay. The fifth one is to persuade them to take an outside perspective. So sometimes we're so focused in on seeing things in a certain way that if you could see, well, suppose, and you try to get out of your perspective entirely and see it differently. And then finally, be kind. If you're coming at someone and you're putting them down, you're telling them how stupid they are for not understanding something, well, then their emotional defenses are up, and that causes a lot of problems. But if you're able to be sympathetic and kind and respectful, then the person feels, and again, it's not logic that is persuading them, but the person feels a closeness, a connection to you, and is more likely to try to want to see your point of view. So these are the ideas. Obviously, you should read it very carefully in more detail. So the two topics I have here: describe a time that you were able to change a person's mind by deliberately using perspective technique. What was the situation and the issues? So if you do an essay like this, you want to definitely refer to the article as your introduction. You don't want to just tell me a story. You don't want to just tell me you're in a situation and I read it and I'm like, well, why am I even being told this? You want to say, this is a time that I found myself in a situation where I used 3 of the 6 techniques offered in David Robeson's article, and I found that this worked, but this didn't work so much. So here is, as a thesis, an experience I had where some of his techniques proved to be effective and others did not. And then you go through, you could tell me the events and how you use them, but you don't want to just tell me a story, a narrative, without the narrative having a purpose that's created in the beginning and then refer to at the end. The second one, excuse me. If you think about it, there are issues in which you have an opinion that honestly you don't know enough. That if you think about it, that you honestly don't know enough to have. What about write about a self-reflection in which you confront your own lack of knowledge on a subject and what you think you could do about it. So it's interesting as we walk around all the time thinking, oh, I know this, or this is what I think about this, and this is my opinion. But if we stop and we go past the illusion of depth, we realize, gee, I really don't know that much about this. So what I'm asking people to do is, I guess, a self-examination of places where you feel like you walk around with a commitment to your beliefs, but you realize, I really don't know for sure why I'm supportive of this thing, or I want this to happen in politics, or I believe, we should do whatever, and I don't want to put forth choices because I want people to come up with that for themselves. Okie doke. So this is it. I think this is the last video that I'll be posting in terms of the articles. Again, as always, if people have questions, put them into the comments, and I'll try to answer as much as I can. Thank you very much.